Okay, which means we have a whole slate to talk about here for this Sunday on No House Advantage. So, along with Geoff, I'm Eytan, Tyler producing. We appreciate you rolling with us. No House Advantage. You can match your first deposit up to $50. We'll remind you about that throughout the show. Geoff, this is one of these days yesterday where and it's a very rare occurrence, must I say, but yesterday was one of those days where I'm just like, you know what? Poor Geoff, poor Tyler, poor Pete McCarthy having to do this once a week. You guys had the toughest show of the year trying to find some value in that dog shit football game last night.
Yeah.
Now we can at least look forward to the weekend.
I mean, it's funny. We talked about all the props, went over some strategy last night, but then at the end of the show, it was just like, you know what? You should probably take like one dude over and then just take everything else under. That was like, and that probably could have been the show, to be honest. But, yes. And like, honestly, that was the strategy that probably worked too. I think like, you know, you take like Fields over maybe, and that was it. And like that, and that hit, and everything else was like, yeah. So
sure as hell wasn't Carson Wentz passing yards. What do you think?
No, it wasn't bad. Yeah.
Jeez, what an awful football game. So that's the good news, is that we can move on from that and hit the full slate. We have our projections up on Stokastic. Those are free. We also have the optimal lineup available to you. If you just want to plug and play from 10 all the way down to 1, we got you covered on that one. Or if you want to mix and match based on what Geoff is talking about with our projections, which are free, you can do one or both. It's totally up to you, but we have them up there for you. We just refreshed them before the show. So these are hot off the presses, sir. And I don't know. I mean, I'm always curious on a Friday when we look at the entire slate, right? We don't have Monday or Thursday, which is much more centralized to one game. Are you looking at our site to kind of look at a good place to start? Are you looking at a game that maybe jumps out thinking, hey, I really like a high total, low total? Are you looking at a side maybe and think, you know, there's no way the Rams cover that 10 points against Carolina? Take us through your initial process of where you want to start.
Yeah, I always try to look for good matchups, like, you know, like teams that are just weak in certain areas, you know, funnel defenses, funnel to the pass defenses. Some teams are just shitty against the run, you know, like the Chargers. They're not on the slate, but,
right.
You know, like, I mean, yeah, but that's the process for me. I always looking for matchups first. And then we go from there, because, you know, matchups are only part of it. Like, you know, you need opportunity, you need players in good situations, but yeah, I mean, we could start off, I mean, like San Francisco, Atlanta is kind of interesting. I mean, you know, both two good run defenses there, but you have an Atlanta secondary that's not very good. I know we have Deebo Samuel up here close to the top of the projections. He's a big under because he's got a 5.5 reception total, but like he's still an interesting play for me from the fact that he's playing a weaker, you know, pass defense. Like if I'm looking at Deebo this week, you know, just in terms of a sports book prop, his prop is a lot lower. I'm going over, but even on No House Advantage, you know, like it's a good, again, you're looking for ways to be different. We're talking about their pick'em contest. I think Deebo is in a really good spot this week. I think that the Atlanta is actually going to keep this game close, which means that Garoppolo could be throwing later than people expect too. So, you know, Deebo's just, it's going to be a contrarian move. I think that people look at those totals, but that's what we get. That's what we get with No House Advantage. It's different site. They give out different totals, and that's what makes it interesting. So yeah, I mean, that's just one place to start, but for me, yeah, it's matchups. I'm always looking for matchups to take advantage of.
We have a lot, you know, and speaking of a couple of guys and teams that you mentioned here, just looking at our own projections, it's right back to and it makes sense, right? As you get closer, things may move. And you mentioned how NHA has a different line at times, more often than not, where you can take advantage of than the books, for example. And I don't know how much, if anything's really going to change, but you know, we've got what, seven plays that are 70% or higher to the under when you look at our top 7 plays across the board. Now we've got everything. I think just doing the math in my head here, it's probably like, I don't know, 15 or 18 straight until you hit an over, which happens to be, as Tyler reminded us pre-show, Matt Ryan's interception. And then the next over down there is another interception prop. So you have to go like 40 props or so down to find Jeff Wilson going over, like over being a good thing, and Jeff Wilson going over a prop. So we are heavy to the under. Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, you mentioned Deebo, right? So there are chances or opportunities, Geoff, to immediately tail, hey, Bryce Hall, love that under. Or as you mentioned, there are times in which these are free. We have a ton of subscribers. So it would make sense that people would follow this, and maybe you do go contrarian and go over one of these high under props. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, like, you have to pick your spots. I mean, and it's not even that we have projections out, and you should check them out. I mean, they'll give you a great base. And again, especially if you're new to it, like, you look at the prop, these aren't the props that you'll see across the industry, right? These are no house advantage specific lines for the pick'em contest. And if, if you're going up against newer players and you're in their contest and there's always overlay there, like, most people are going to look at them and they'll still take some overs because they think, oh, well, I mean, like, these are good players, but these lines are bigger than projected for most players, right? So it makes sense that our projections are saying, like, most of these are going to be better underplays. And you do want to go heavy on the unders. Absolutely. I'm not trying to drive people off taking unders at all. But if you're just following the projections, to your point, and which I think is extremely spot on, like, you're going to get duplicated. You could, well, it's not even duplicated because we have a major slate, but there's going to be certain situations where trying to be a little bit different is going to pay off. Like, I mean, like, I just don't think many people are going to be taking Deebo Samuels over as a good example. So, you can do that. And again, like, players and situations, like, I think Deebo Samuel is a great boom target this week. And I think, like, Jamar Chase is as well. So again, it's not just random overs that you want to take, but if you're going against the projections and you think it's a good matchup and you think the player's in for a big week, don't be afraid to put it in, because there's that DFS strategy component where if you're the only one on this guy, then, it's going to give you a boost. So,
yeah. And the two guys that we have, you mentioned Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle right below him, clearly with Tyreek Hill and also Skylar Diggins out there, right? No, Thompson. Sorry. Jeez. That was not on.
I like Diggins better, though.
Me too. I honestly, to be totally honest, if you were to start with a week's worth of practice, Thompson or Diggins, give me Skylar Diggins at the quarterback spot by all means. So I apologize to both the Diggins and Thompson.
I called him Skylar Moore, but my excuse earlier in the week was that there's a Sky Moore in the league, so that was
right. Okay, but Skylar Moore does kind of roll off.
Yeah.
So I get it. But this, you're right, where you don't just fade or you don't just go contrarian to go contrarian. It does kind of have to make sense here. But Chase, look, 6.5 is a big number for most guys in the NFL. It's probably not under normal circumstances, especially with one other receiver of the trio being banged up in Higgins. So you maybe you are buying a little low for Jamar Chase. And with Waddle, it's different means, but it's the same end where it's like, oh my God, you've got a quarterback who they're probably going to run more like an H-back than they will a quarterback throwing. So yeah, fade every single Miami. Like, that's probably the general thinking here. Fade every single Dolphins wide receiver. But I actually think of the 10 to 15 that we have that jump out right away that are unders, these two, I think, make some of the most sense to be contrarian if you were going to go down that road.
Yeah. And like, to your point on Waddle, I mean, who else is going to catch the ball, right? Like, I mean, and what did we see from Jalen Waddle last year? He had like a 7-yard per reception. Like, he was just using the short game completely, and he works really well in that game. So yeah, I could see him just getting peppered with targets and just getting there and maybe not putting up that many yards, but like just barely going over both. And again, like to the point that if you're going to take an over on one of these guys, just make sure you're correlating it. Like the whole, again, we're making teams here. Like, it's not just, we're not just like picking one prop and that's it. We're making teams for the pick'em contest. So you've got a bunch of spots. So again, Jamar Chase, you can go over on his yards, go over on Joe Burrow, maybe take the other side of the game and go over on like Kamara as well. And just play for just an outright, slugfest, which I think that I actually like that game. That's one reason why I'm talking about it. I think that game will have points. The Saints secondary has not been very good at stopping big plays. So yeah, I like that's the biggest thing. If you're going to be a little bit, if you're going to take a stance on a player, make sure you go all the way with it. Don't just be like, yeah, I'll take that over on this receiver. Try cash in on like multiple props on it, because if one thing happens, there's always a domino effect in the NFL.
Yep.
Receiver has a big day, his quarterback's going for 300 yards. So
No, it makes sense. And you're right with that correlating factor in there. And that's a secondary, and I don't mean that as a negative, and like that's a second, I should say, piece of strategy and just approach that I don't think a lot of people will do here, especially NHA. It's easier if you're building like, a same game parlay, but essentially you're applying some deeper strategy here on NHA that I don't think a lot of people are cognizant about, to say the least. So it's a good point. I do want to bring you into the concept, because we do this on the shows, right? We try and find ones that we love right away. Like, yeah, our site is spot on. Brees Hall is right there at the top. Yeah. Saquon going under. Then we look at good contrarian play. Not then, but we also look at good contrarian plays. Chase Waddle, we talked about that. Is there a prop that you think may be too low? Like, I'll give you an example. And shout out to Lofty on the Odd Shop for running these stats down here. But Matt Ryan is like the worst, right? He leads the league in interception, like all these things. He's terrible. Jacksonville's defense, a little motivated following that terrible showing against Houston, not their defense, but the team and all. I think I'm actually surprised. Like, I think that should probably be upwards to like 70, 72% that Matt Ryan goes over his interception. So while it's at 62.6 for us, Geoff, I think you could easily have this as a higher point play.
Yeah, I mean, like Matt Ryan, I think I've written him up about interception prop like at least twice this year already. You just do it every week. I mean, the interception props too they don't get enough love. Like, I mean, no. Like again, you can pick on players like Stafford right now. I think you can pick on too. Like, these are players you can just go over on like 0. As long as their line is at 0.5. You do it the whole year, like you're just cashing a couple units at the very least, it feels like, at the very least. So yeah, I agree. Like, 0.9. And like the Colts I'm just kind of done with the Colts. I mean, tried to jump on them earlier, like after the slow start. They didn't get it together. They didn't deserve to win the Denver game. So I don't have any respect. Like, I'm not going to call like a Colts uprising here. I think Jacksonville probably has a good chance of just dominating the game again, which is good for our interception prop, because it just means Matt Ryan will be out there doing Matt Ryan things late in the game, which is throwing picks. So that one, definitely I'm agreement. Like, it looked even a little bit too low. Let's see, like where, like the rushing yards. It's funny because I know we brought this up, but like the rushing prop on Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah.
I know it's like, it's projected. It's one of our only ones that we like over, but I'm surprised at this projection. Like 76, like we have Wilson projected as a strong over, and I'm like Atlanta's rush defense is pretty good, and they're on the road here, and Tevin Coleman's getting worked in. So like, I'm actually surprised this one is that high. Like that one kind of jumped out to me as like, okay, that's not a place I was expecting to go over. So I'm interested to, like, I think people will take the over on that because, San Francisco's like a favorite, but that's one I actually am surprised is that high. So that's another one that jumps out. And then just as like a couple of unders that we'll throw out as well.
Yep.
I think the Wilson interception prop is actually interesting too. Like, I could see that potentially being a little bit bigger. Lambeau, road, big underdogs.
Absolutely.
So that was another one that kind of jumped out.
Yeah. And just to pull the specific numbers, like Zach Wilson, he's won 5 games as a starter. 4 of those have come against rookie quarterbacks. So you look at and even this year, they've taken advantage of circumstances, right? Mitch Trubisky gets pulled in the middle of a game for a rookie. I mean, the Jets have beaten rookie quarter, backup, what have you. The whole thing with Miami, guy gets pulled, concussion. So I'm with you. And I just say that because to set up the whole game flow, I love Green Bay in this game. I don't even think you need to tease them necessarily, even at 7.5. And then looking at Wilson during this time, on the road, he's got a 5 to 7 TD to interception ratio. That's his career, like on the road, right? So, it kind of just lends itself to being a tough day for Zach Wilson more so than anybody else. And again, if that's the case, they're going to be down. They're still going to have to throw. Maybe you do start fading Michael Carter and Brees Hall as we have right there at the top. Like, doesn't that correlate? If
yes,
Wilson's throwing picks, Brees Hall ain't running the football.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit I don't want to give the Jets too much credit, but like I do like the talent they've accumulated. So it worries me from a talent perspective of fading Breece Hall, but like you said, I mean, they've had some pretty cake matchups, and they got lucky with Miami going against the third stringer last week, and it was still a little bit dicey there. So the public, and the thing I always worry about the Jets, the public's starting to get on the Jets. Yeah. So when the public's starting to get on the Jets, it's usually not a good thing. Again, a little worried about Breece Hall because he's a talented guy, but he could get there. But he can also just have a big day as a receiver. Like they've been peppering their RBs with targets. So I think I like it. And again, if you're doing the Wilson interception prop, it's a great call by you. Take the under on Breece Hall, because if we get one or two like Wilson INTs, like Breece Hall ain't getting a whole boatload of carries. They're going to have to start playing catch up. The Packers off the ball for like 40 minutes. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
I'm going to throw another one out at you that was just, it seemed a little off. Now it's a tight projection based on where NHA's line is. So it's probably 59.1% because the line at NHA is so sharp, but the line seems low to me. And then on top of that, going under seems a little off. And I'm talking Tyler Boyd here specifically we don't know the severity of T. Higgins. It clearly impacted him last week. And, credit Tyler, we're talking about this before the show. I mean, everybody sees it. They're doubling, tripling. They're doing whatever they want to Jamar Chase to make his life much more difficult. It kind of screams, hey, work Tyler Boyd in as much as you can. And I get it. Like, he's the third of the trio. He's Tyler Boyd. He's not Jamar Chase, but getting 4 receptions in this game, this week, under these circumstances, Geoff, it seemed a little low.
Yeah, it does. And I think it probably is mainly just due to the fact that Higgins is questionable.
And he's not
he's not ruled out.
Yep.
So I think if we had harder news on Higgins, then yeah, the over. But again, he didn't get any points last game. Like, he played, but he didn't get any points. So, and it hasn't really looked good in practice this week. I think if he plays, there's a good chance he's just a decoy, right? And Tyler Boyd, a big slot receiver. And I like the fact you brought up the receptions too, because Boyd's the average depth of target isn't big, and that may not change regardless of if Higgins is in or not. But yeah, from a reception standpoint against a weaker Saints secondary, that makes a ton of sense. So I think even if Higgins plays, it's a good over. And the thing is, you can put it in your lineup. And again, if you get a scenario where he's out there as a decoy, he's just there as an emergency, Boyd's going to play a ton. So no, I agree. I already brought up the Bengals. I love the passing. So Boyd as a third man there with Burrow and Chase makes sense to me.
What else is there?
I think Boyd just on his own. I don't even know if you need to correlate that. That's just a low prop, like you said. So yeah,
right. Yeah. And look, just above him and sandwiched, right, is Aaron Rodgers with the interception, which is basically 0.5 to 0.5, 1-to-1.
Yeah.
But we're about 21 yards below for Joe Burrow. And I don't think these correlate by any means. So I don't want to come out and say that, hey, if you're going over Boyd receptions, definitely go over, Joe Burrow passing yards, because it could easily be only one working. Is there, just because we were talking about this game though, and Jamar Chase, the struggle to get him the football, and T. Higgins being banged up and not having the ultimate confidence in Tyler Boyd, what do you think of that prop? 274.5 is where NHA has it. 253.8 is where Alex has his projection.
Yeah, no. And I get it. The projection seems fine. Saints are a little bit of a pace down team that they definitely could run the ball a little bit, but at the same time, just with the big plays their offense has been giving up. I think that the range of outcomes for Burrow, at least in this game, are big enough that the over is in play, even with that big stretch. And again, you've always got to think the mentality of the field, looking at Joe Burrow's passing prop, is that, he had a shitty game last week. He's not playing as good as he was last year. The Chase sucks now. This is an easy under. So I actually think this will probably be a popular under for people. But again, Geno Smith threw the ball 25 times against the Saints last week, and he had 3 touchdowns and was I think he had 12 yards per pass attempt or something. It's just absurd. So ton of big plays. We've got elite wide receivers with the Bengals too. I just like this matchup. I think that the Bengals are going to have to pass. It's a tough run defense. And again, like we're talking tournament plays. Like I wouldn't put this as an over in like a versus the house contest where you're making your own props and you're picking. But yeah, absolutely. Like for a little DFS action where we're just focused on first place, we want to get over on the field. Absolutely. I think that's got potential.
Where else do you look around and maybe you're a little surprised at our projections? I slammed. Maybe I'm missing something. We go back to Thompson, Diggins, Moore, but go ahead. I asked you and I cut it.
I was just gonna say like a couple that I feel good about. Like I like the Brissett under. The Brissett under to me is like
passing
that one you can just put in. That feels like it's not a free square, but like it feels pretty good. Like 208 against the Patriots. I know Brissett's looked good, but he's looked good against like really crappy teams, like teams that give up yards and don't bring pressure. The Patriots will make, they may make Brissett beat them, but like it's going to be dink and dunk. So it's going to be like beat us with like, Donovan Peoples-Jones or like your backup tight end. So I feel pretty good about that one, to be honest.
You could run on New England too.
Yes, absolutely. I don't even think New England's that good. So
no, not especially stopping the run. Sorry.
Yeah, which means just Nick Chubb is going to have a big day.
Mind.
And again, like you can correlate this. You could if you use Brissett. I think that like going with the Chubb over, who's just playing really, really good. Like Nick Chubb's just playing really well this year. I think that's fine. So that's one that I like. just a strong under for us. Another one that pops out to me is just like Zach Ertz. I do not want to fade Zach Ertz this week. I do not want to take the under. He's got 48.5 receiving prop. And I know he doesn't get many yards after the catch, but that one scares me a little bit. So that one popped out. I'd probably just leave that or like take an over, maybe just to pair him with Kyler. Let's go down the board a little bit. See what else.
Let me throw one out real quick. Because
we're
just talking about this game. The Browns have given up 200 rushing yards in each of their last two games. So much like New England, you can run all over Cleveland. We know Damian Harris limited, banged up, not ruled out, but will probably play with injury. And we also know that Belichick, as crazy and as wacky as his running back rotations can be, he doesn't lean on a dude if he's banged up, especially, first half of the season. This should open. Now, look, it's a big number, 83.5 for Ramondre Stevenson, Geoff, but come on. Like, this should be Nick Chubb numbers he should be able to put up against Cleveland.
His prop is almost as big as Nick Chubb's. Nick Chubb's 85.5. We have both these guys projected for over 80 rushing yards.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy in the same game. Like, that's nuts.
What's even crazy?
That very often.
This game may go over as much as they run the football because of chunk plays and scoring on the ground.
It's really interesting, actually. When you think about it, but like to your point, it feels like a really good game to also just like load up on, because we can take the Brissett under, we can take Chubb overs. And what else is New England going to do but run with Ramondre Stevenson, who's really good too. That's the other factor here. So yeah, I don't know how you'd want to play that. I guess you could, if Stevenson goes over, does that hurt the Brissett under a little bit? I don't know. I don't even know if it does. It just I think,
honestly, Geoff, I think all three correlate. I think set under passing yards correlates with both running backs, Chubb and Stevenson, going over. In fact, I think if you were fading Brissett, you either have to pass on the two running backs or go under, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think all three of them are correlated.
Yeah, I just don't see a scenario in this game where even if team is behind, like they don't run the ball, right? So
exactly.
To your point, I don't disagree.
Cleveland's been in like every game, I think, but one has been a field goal or less, right?
Yeah.
And they're running the shit out of the football.
The Falcons are interesting too. That's another team. Like we have really low props on Tyler Algier and Drake London.
Yeah, Algier, he's going to get carries, Algier, right?
Yeah, I know. They're mixing in like Caleb Huntley. He looks good. I'd probably be more prone to take the over on Drake London than between those two. I think London, his snap count is down a little bit, but San Francisco's rush defense is definitely a strength of their team, but their secondary is gettable. So I think it's actually a good spot to go over on Drake London, who we do have projected for a strong overplay. that's one I would feel good mixing in too. Like that's, I mean, we haven't projected. I don't think many people are going to look to the Falcons offense, but if Kyle Pitts is very questionable for this game, like it's going to be a game time decision, even if he plays not 100%. So, and the 49ers defense also, like just their scheme, they just protect the tight end position well. So London
missing a lot of guys too.
Yeah.
Right. Couple I know Bosa, but I think it's a lot actually.
Is it okay? Well, maybe we should load up on both these guys because they're low props. I just like Tyler Algier, man. He's like the new Marshawn Lynch to me. I think he's going to be really, really good. Love the way he runs. If we can just get him a couple more carries every week, I mean, 48.5 is draft. We haven't projected for over 50. So again, it's a good projection play on its own. And then another running back, like we talked about Miami a bit, but like Mostert's prop, we basically have projected as neutral, slight underplay at 63.5. I think Mostert's going to get another 18, 20 carries here. He's looked really good. I know he had like a day off, but everyone was worried as his knee, but it was he returned to full practice. So I think he's going to get quite a few touches in this game. I think he probably goes over too.
That's a great call. A lot of speed with Mostert, and you definitely can take advantage of that for sure. I like that a lot because it's kind of hidden, right? Where it's an under projection, but it's a very, very slim difference of like 0.6 between the line and projection. But it definitely speaks this game and the game flow, I think, would speak to Mostert. That's a sneaky one there that I don't think a lot of people would look at, especially going over that. 63.5 doesn't seem like a terrible hill to climb.
It's not. And it like, if I'm remembering correctly, that's pretty much what his projection is around the league. Like it might be a little bit bigger than he might be in the high 50s, but we're not talking like a huge mountain to climb here. I mean, a 70-yard game, even a 100-yard game wouldn't surprise me here. So I think Miami will definitely stick with Mostert, even if they get behind a little bit. And I mean, as we saw last week, like teams traveling to play these AFC East teams, they have trouble. So like, I wouldn't be going crazy. Actually, like a Kirk Cousins interception prop, if you want to get a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
On the other, like that might be something to mix in with like a Mostert over, right? So Cousins, actually four of his 5 INTs have come outdoors this year as well. We do have Cousins projected as like a small over, but it's not like a strong play. But
right.
I think if you're using the Mostert over, the Cousins interception over, I think that's a good one to mix in for sure.
All right. On the way out, want to pose a question. It's an either or, both neither. So you can do whatever the hell you want here. But I both quarterbacks in the Baltimore Giants game are projected to go under passing yards. And I get it. Both can move on the ground, and you've got the running game, Saquon. You also have Lamar spearheading that in Baltimore. I feel like at least one of these guys is going to go over. Who's got the better shot? Now, to be fair, like 7 guys were just ruled out. Kadarius Toney. When's the last time Kenny Golladay has played for the New York Giants? 3 years ago?
Why hasn't he been cut yet? Is the question.
Seriously, like what is going on? But Daniel Jones down a couple of guys. I get that.
Yeah,
we have them both on. It just feels like this is one of these games where it's so easy to say, neither one of these guys passing, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, Daniel Jones throws for 280 or Lamar throws for 350, something like that.
I would definitely lean on the Jones between the two of them. The Ravens secondary, I still think is like very gettable, regardless of who's out there going up against them. And I get like, I don't even like, and actually Darius Slayton is I think going to become a thing this week. Again, potentially they still have Bellinger, Saquon in the past game. Yeah. I would go over on Daniel Jones. I think Lamar will be fine. I just don't think that they're going to have to pass as much. I mean, they're 5-point favorites. Dobbins is back. I think you'll see that kind of game, like just a bit of a slower paced game from the Ravens offense. They'll still be able to move the ball, but I think it'll be Jones who goes over. We have them both projected as like, what do you call like average underplays?
Yeah, about. Yeah, I'd say that. Okay.
I think it would be Jones. That'd be my call.
Awesome. That's why I asked. Just curious. All right. Appreciate you, brother, as always. We'll be back on Monday. We have Monday Night Football to look at. So we're here throughout the season for No House Advantage. Continue to build these winning lineups, make you some money out there. Between Geoff, our free projections, and the optimal lineups on site, there is no excuse now to not collect a little cash each and every time you're playing out there in NHA. We'll even use, as you see, you can use our first deposit up to $50 with our promo code Stokastic. All right, brother. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. See you.
We'll see you.